Hey guys, in this video, I want to talk to you about the fundamentals of academic reading. So in this video, we're going to be covering some basic information and some of the general information that you need to know before you go in to take this test. So let's get started. So first, let's talk about how your score is going to be calculated. Now, this course is on the academic IELTS reading and not the general reading. So I'm not going to be going into the scoring for the general reading. I'll just talk about the academic reading. So as you can see over here, the scoring is basically divided up by the number of questions that you answer correctly. For example, if you answer between 39 to 40 questions correctly, then you're going to get a band 9. On the other hand, if you get 37 to 38 questions correctly, then you're going to score band 8.5. And on it goes for all of these different classifications of the scoring. So typically, if you want to get a band 7 or higher, you need to aim to get at least 30 questions correct. There is a total of 40 questions. So out of those 40 questions, you have to get 30 of them answered correctly in order to get a band 7 or higher. Now let's talk about some basic information. The first thing that you need to know is that in this reading test, you're going to have a total of 3 reading passages. In order to complete these 3 passages, you will have a total of 60 minutes. That's 1 hour. So within that 1 hour, you have to answer all 40 questions in the 3 passages. You're going to have about 20 minutes per passage. Now, in each reading passage, remember there are 3 of them, and in each one of them, you're going to get about 13 to 14 questions on average. Now, here's the cool thing about the reading test. You're going to see so many different types of questions, but actually, all those different types of questions are simply different variations of 2 basic types of questions. The 2 basic types of questions are the multiple choice question and the fill in the blank question. So in the next video, I'm going to be showing you all the different types of questions that you can expect to see on the reading test. But keep in mind that all these different questions are just variations of either a multiple choice question or a variation of a fill in the blank question. Next, you need to know that the level of English gets progressively more difficult as you progress through the 3 passages. So what that means is that reading passage number 1 is going to be easier than reading passage number 2. And reading passage number 2 is going to be easier than the reading passage number 3. So the level of English that you need in order to get a high score, in order to answer correctly, that gets progressively more difficult as you progress throughout the reading test. Next, now this one is an important point, and this point is that examiners are going to create a question from only 1 to 2 sentences from a passage. So when you get the reading test, you're going to see a passage, and in that passage there are going to be several paragraphs and several sentences per paragraph. But actually, for each question that you see on the test, the answer to each one of those questions can be found in just 1 or 2 sentences from the passage. So what that means is that you don't have to read multiple sentences in order to find the right answer. You don't have to read entire paragraphs in order to answer the questions correctly. You only have to read 1 to 2 sentences. Now the trick is, of course, to know exactly which 1 to 2 sentences you need to be reading. So identifying the correct sentences is part of the strategy that you will need to get a high score on the reading test, and we're going to cover this in much more detail later down the road. Next, You will have about 1.5 minutes per question, so about a minute 30 per question or 90 seconds. So remember, there are a total of 40 questions in the reading test. So if you spend about 90 seconds per question, then you should be able to answer all 40 questions in the total time of 60 minutes that you have available. Now, in regards to the points that each question is worth, each one is worth exactly 1 point. So this is useful to know because now you know that easy questions are worth 1 point and difficult questions are also worth 1 point. So which question do you think you should answer first? The easy ones, of course, because you're going to be able to answer the easy questions in a shorter amount of time. So don't waste your precious time by answering the difficult questions first, because the easy questions and the difficult ones are both worth 1 point. Next, keep in mind that you do not have any extra time for transferring answers. So, for example, when you're taking the listening test, there is extra time. You have some extra time at the end of the test to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. But with reading, this is not the case. So within that 1 hour, you have to not only answer the questions, you also have to transfer them onto your answer sheet. Next, make sure that you use correct spelling and grammar. In the reading test, there are going to be certain questions, for example, the fill in the blank questions, where you will have to write out either the word or perhaps certain phrases. So when you write out the words and the phrases, you have to make sure that your spelling is correct. And your grammar also has to be correct. Because let's say if you answer the question correctly, but you spell it wrong, then what's going to happen is you will not get any points for that. So even though your answer is correct, but because your spelling is wrong, you're not going to get any points for that. So spelling and grammar are important when you are jotting down your answers on the answer sheet. Next, this is an important point as well. The reading test is actually a test of whether you can understand synonyms. That's really the simplest way to put it. If you don't know what synonyms are, I will explain to you that right now. Synonyms are basically different words that have the same meaning. So for example, if you want to use a different word for the word international, then instead of saying international, you can use synonyms, which means different words that mean the same thing. So instead of saying international, you could say overseas. That means the same thing as international. You could also use the word abroad. Abroad also means international or overseas. So you see, synonyms are different words that mean the same thing or about the same thing. They don't have to mean exactly the same thing, but approximately the same thing. So if you can understand synonyms, then you are going to perform well on the reading test. You can think of the IELTS reading test as a test of only 2 things. The first thing that the examiner wants to know is, can you find the part of the text that has the answer? So this is about locating the correct sentence or the correct part where you're going to find the answer. The next thing that the examiners want to know is, do you understand that part of the text? So understanding means understanding the meaning and understanding the synonyms that are being used to communicate that meaning. Now, let's talk about some common mistakes that students often make, and these are things that you should avoid. So, here are some of the most common mistakes. The first one is that students often end up reading too much text, and this is just a waste of time. If you're reading too much text from the passage, you're wasting precious time. And the other problem that happens by reading too much text is that students start to apply extra information to a question. And What this means is that you read extra information from the passage and you start to think of the different possible answers. And if you do this, you're going to get confused between the different multiple choices. You're going to ask yourself, is the correct answer option A or is the correct answer option B? You'll not be sure because you have read too much text and now you're applying more information to the question than you need to. In other words, you are answering the question in a way that it should not be answered in. Okay? So don't apply extra information, apply just the right amount of information. And if you're going to apply the right amount of information, then for that, you have to read just the right amount of text. Not too much text and not too little text either. The next thing that you should avoid is spending too much time on one answer. This is obvious. Again, we don't have a lot of time on the reading test. There's only 60 minutes, about a minute and a half per question. So don't spend too much time on one answer so that you can save up that precious time. And also, like I mentioned before, each question on the test is worth 1 point. So if a question is seeming difficult for you, then just skip over it and go on to do the easy questions first. And then if you have time left over at the end of the test, then you can just go back and answer those questions that you did not get a chance to answer before. Another thing you need to avoid is going over the word count. Now, in the questions, such as in the fill-in-the-blank questions, you're going to receive clear instructions that are going to tell you exactly how many words you need to write for your answer, how many words you need in order to fill in the blank. So if the question says that you only need to use 2 words, then don't use 3 words. If you end up using more than 2 words or less than 2 words, then even though your answer may be correct, you're still going to not get any points for that. Okay? So that question is going to be marked wrong if you go over the word count, even if there is the right answer in there somewhere. If it says 2 words, you have to write 2 words. If it says the word limit is 3 words, then you have to write 3 words. Now, usually as a general note, you're not going to have to write any more than 3 words. Most questions are going to require you to write anywhere between 1 word and 3 words for the different variations of the fill-in-the-blank questions. Another mistake that students often make is that they end up changing the answer from how it appears in the reading passage. So you have to write the answer exactly as it appears in the reading passage. So for example, if the correct answer in the reading passage says Egyptian pyramids, then you should not write pyramids of Egypt or pyramids from Egypt. Okay? The correct answer is Egyptian pyramids. It's a 2-word answer, and you should not change the form of the answer by switching the words around or by changing up the grammar or the syntax, the structure of the answer. Keep it exactly the same as it appears in the reading passage. So here are some of the ways in which students may change their answer. They might change the plurality. For example, the correct answer may be flower, 1 flower. But if you write the answer as flowers, you add an S at the end and you make it plural, then that's going to be marked wrong because you changed the form of the answer. It was supposed to be a singular answer and you changed it into a plural answer. Or the other way around, maybe the answer was supposed to be plural, flowers. But instead you removed the S and you turned it singular, and now it's wrong because you did not keep the answer exactly as it appears in the reading passage. The next way that students often change the answer from how it appears in the reading passage is by abbreviating the answer. You should avoid abbreviations as well. Sometimes it's okay, but generally speaking, you should try to avoid abbreviations. For example, if the correct answer is microphone, then you should not abbreviate it to mic. Mic is an abbreviation for microphone. It's a shorter version. So you should not abbreviate words. So microphone should be left as microphones and should not be changed into mic. Similarly, if the correct answer is computer, then you should leave the answer as computer. Do not abbreviate it to PC, or do not change the form of the answer by using a synonym such as laptop. Okay, don't use a synonym either. So I hope that that is clear for you. The answer should not be changed. Everything from the plurality to the structure to the word count, all of that should remain exactly the same as it appears in the reading passage. Otherwise, you're going to get it wrong. A couple more notes. So another mistake that students will often make is reading the passage before the questions. Guys, do not do this. I know so many students who screw up on their test because they end up reading the passage before the questions. Because what happens when you read the passage before the questions is that you have no idea what you're looking for. What information are you really searching for? You don't know that unless you first read the questions. So always start with the questions first, and then once you know what you're going to be looking for, then go to the reading passage and look for the specific answers. Another mistake that students often make is that they do the difficult questions first and then they do the easy ones. Some students think that if they get the difficult questions out of the way first, then the second half of their test or the remainder of their test is going to be much easier, is going to be more relaxing, because now that they've taken care of the difficult stuff, it should be no problem to take care of the easy stuff. So students often think that way, and I can understand that point of view, but honestly, this is not a great strategy. On the IELTS exam, on the reading part, you only have 1 hour, so you have to be very careful about how you spend that time. So do the easy ones first, because the easy questions are worth the same number of points as the difficult ones. They are both worth exactly 1 point. So do the easy ones first and not the difficult ones first. The next mistake is that students do not write the answers on the answer sheet in a timely manner. So this is up to you how you want to do this. Ideally, I would suggest that once you have answered a particular set of questions, perhaps there are 6 questions in a fill-in-the-blank question that appears on the test. So if you are answering a certain question set in which you see 6 questions, then go ahead and answer those 6 questions first. And once you've answered them, then go to the answer sheet immediately after that and fill out the correct answers before progressing on to the next set of questions. So you can do it this way, or if you rather prefer answering the first reading passage and answering all the reading passage 1 questions first and then transferring them to the answer sheet, that's also fine. You can answer the reading passages first and then transfer the answers onto the answer sheet. So for example, you may fill out the answers for reading passage number 1 and then transfer those answers to your answer sheet. Next, you can answer your reading passage number 2 questions and then transfer them onto the answer sheet, and then finally do the same thing with your reading passage number 3. So if that works for you, you can do that, or if you want to transfer the answers after completing each set of questions, then you can do that as well. So just find out whatever works best for you. Another mistake that you should be avoiding is searching for exact keywords. Now, oftentimes students think that if a question is asking about a certain thing, about a certain specific thing, then they can simply look for that specific keyword in the reading passage and then find the answer there. This is true some of the times, but very rarely does this happen, very rarely. And you should not really be searching for exact keywords. This is not really going to be the case in the reading passages. What you're going to find is that instead of finding the exact keywords, you will have to find the synonyms instead. So let's say that if you are reading a passage about computers, then if a question asks you about computers, then you should not go into your reading passage and look for the word computer. You are probably not going to find it. Almost never are you going to find it. So what you should be doing is, instead of looking for the word computer, look for the synonym of that word. What is another word that means the same thing as a computer? Well, it might be laptop. So instead of looking for the word computer, you should be also looking for other words related to computer, other words that mean the same thing, like laptop, PC. I can't really think of any other ones. So in the case of computer, the synonym that you should be looking for is laptop, PC, and other things that could possibly mean a computer. For example, some kind of an electronic device that does programming and processing. That can count as a computer. So all of that is synonym language, and you have to look for the language that means the same thing as the specific keyword that you're looking for. So don't search for the exact keywords, rather search for the synonym language. You're going to see many different examples of this throughout this course when we answer the different question types. So you'll get more insight on that very soon. The next mistake is reading every single word. Guys, you do not have to read every single word. All you have to do is simply scan. And I'm going to talk more about what scanning is very soon. But keep in mind, you don't have to read every single word carefully. You do not have the time for it. You only have 60 minutes and you have to answer 40 questions. So you have to be more strategic about how you go about answering these different questions. So we're going to talk more about how to scan rather than to read every single word. Finally, not understanding the question. Do not proceed to answer the question if you do not understand what the question is asking you. Okay, so first you have to know what it is asking you, and then once you understand the question, only then does it make sense to look for the answer. Now, I want to talk about the 4 keys to success, the 4 things that you are going to need if you want to get a band 7 or higher on the reading test. First, you need to have vocabulary. Guys, there is no way around this. If you don't have a solid base of vocabulary, then you're not going to perform well on the reading test. The reading test is mainly a test of vocabulary, a test of understanding synonyms, and so on. So vocabulary is absolutely critical to getting a high score on the reading portion. Next, you have to know how to do the Ielts scanning. So I call it scanning because you are not reading the question, you are simply scanning the question. So what you need to do is you have to be able to identify keywords in a question. So you're going to identify a keyword. So for example, if the question is asking you about computer, then computer is a keyword. And then once you know the keyword, then you're going to look for that keyword in the reading passage. Remember, you are not reading every single word. All you are doing is you are simply looking for the word computer or any other synonym that also means the same thing. For example, a PC or a laptop. So you are looking for synonyms, you are looking for synonym language. So you are doing that by scanning. You are not reading every single word. This is a very important skill to have, and you're going to see me use this throughout this course as I go about answering the different question types for you. Next, time management. You already know this. You only have 1.5 minutes per question. So be sure to manage your time properly, because if you don't, then you will not have time left to answer all the questions. Finally, the question strategy. Now, each one of the different questions uses slightly different strategies. They are similar in a lot of ways, and they are also different in some ways. So you have to know how to answer the different types of questions in a different way, in a specific way. I'll talk more about that in the next video when I talk about the different types of questions that you will see on the reading test. Now let's talk about scanning. I told you that scanning is a very important skill to have, so let's talk about how to do that. So in order to scan, what you have to do is you have to identify between 1 to 3 keywords from the question or from the answer choices. Once you have identified these keywords, then you have to look for these keywords and also the synonyms of these keywords in the reading passage. So when you are looking for these keywords, you are not reading full sentences. Do not do that. Just look for the keywords and look for the synonyms, words and phrases that mean the same thing. Now, there are 3 main ways to scan. Just choose the one that works best for you. Personally, I prefer this first way, which is horizontally. I just read from left to right. If you like to read from right to left, that's also fine. You're not reading, so it doesn't matter. You're just looking for the keywords and the synonyms. So it doesn't matter how you scan. You can do it horizontally, left to right or right to left. You can also do it vertically, up and down, or diagonally. You can scan across the page. And finally, only read the sentence which has the keywords. So when you are scanning and after scanning, when you locate the keyword or you locate the synonym, then only read that one sentence. Do not start reading the entire paragraph. Don't start reading multiple sentences. You should only read one sentence. And if that sentence seems to be connected to the next sentence, only then should you read the next sentence. On the other hand, if the sentence that contains the keyword or the synonym that you're looking for, and if that sentence somehow connects back to the previous sentence, only then read the previous sentence. But otherwise, you should only be reading that one sentence that has the keywords, unless the sentence indicates that you need to read the previous sentence or the one after it in order to understand what the meaning is. So you'll see more examples of exactly how to do this very soon as well. This is just a basic overview for you. Next, I want to talk about the basic approach to reading questions. Now, you are going to be using this basic approach throughout all the reading questions, so be sure to get a general understanding of this. So, the first thing that you have to do is you have to identify the keywords in the question. So read the question, find out which keywords are important, and then underline those keywords or circle those keywords, whatever works best for you. And usually these keywords are going to be nouns or verbs in the question. Next, once you have identified the keywords, then you are simply going to scan the passage. Don't read full sentences, simply scan the passage and look for those keywords that you have underlined or circled, and also look for the synonyms of those keywords. Then, once you have found those keywords or the synonyms of those keywords in the reading passage, then what you need to do is you will have to apply specific question strategy. Now, this specific question strategy can be different depending on which question you get, and we're going to talk a lot more about this very soon, but right now, you just need to know that there are some questions that are going to be in order, and other questions are going to be out of order. What that means is that for some questions, the answers to those questions are going to come in order. So what that means is that the answer to question number 1 is going to come before the answer to question number 2. And the answer to question number 2 is going to come before the answer to question number 3. This is because they are in order. On the other hand, there are some questions that are going to be out of order. So the answer to question number 10 might come before the answer to question number 5 because they are not in order. Okay, so there are going to be certain differences between the different question types, and because of that, you will have to apply different strategies depending on the question that you get. So we're going to cover this in a lot more detail very soon. And once again, this is just a basic overview of how to go about answering the reading questions. Okay, now let's talk about the things that you should be doing on the reading test and things that you should not be doing. So let's begin. So what you should be doing is always start directly with the questions. So what that means is do not read the reading passage first. Start with the questions and then go back to the reading passage. Never read the reading passage first. Next, do the in-order questions first. You should do these questions first because they are easier. And remember, we should do easy questions before the difficult ones. So never do out-of-order questions first because they are, generally speaking, more difficult. Not always, but generally they are more difficult. So do the easiest questions first. Never waste your time on doing the difficult questions first. Next, when you are answering the question, focus on the matching sentence. So what that means is that when you find a keyword in the reading passage, then simply focus on that one sentence where you have found the keyword. So don't read too much, don't read multiple sentences, don't read the entire paragraph. You don't have to do that. You only have to read the 1 to 2 sentences in which you have found your keyword or the synonym language for the keyword. Because if you end up reading too much, then you're going to apply extra information. And by applying extra information to a question, you are probably going to answer it wrong. So don't do that. Read just the right amount. And finally, write the answer exactly as it appears in the reading passage. Do not change the form of the answer. Do not change its plurality. Do not abbreviate it. Do not use synonyms for the correct answer. You have to write the answer exactly as it appears in the reading passage. Don't change the structure of your answer in any way. Keep it exactly the same. Awesome. So I hope that all of that is clear for you. Now, in the next video, I'm going to be talking about the different types of questions that you're going to see on the IELTS reading exam.